Welcome to the second episode of Examining, Understanding, and Taming Fear. In this podcast, and in this particular episode, I'm going to share how my diagnosis with cancer gave me clues on examining and trying to understand fear. And I would like to share some of my thoughts, and hopefully, it's useful in your own journey to examine and overcome fear and anxiety. When I was diagnosed with late stage cancer and metastasis was confirmed, the obvious two questions were: one, can it be cured? And two, how much time do I have left? The problem with these obvious questions is that the answers are statistical in nature. Statistics is counterintuitive to human nature and understanding. We want certainty, yeah, whereas statistics deals with probabilities. So doctors, in this case, generally use what is known as the Kaplan-Meier curve, KM curve, to answer these obvious questions. This KM curve is basically a statistical tool used to estimate and visualize survival rates over time. It represents the proportion of patients surviving for a certain amount of time after treatment or diagnosis. So basically, the x-axis represents the time or the months in years or days or weeks or months since diagnosis and treatment, and the y-axis represents survival probabilities, and it ranges from 0 to 100%. It's never 100. Depending on the staging and all of that, it can range from as low as 10 till up to 90 or 95. So I got three answers. The first doctor, the doctor who diagnosed me, told me that I had 12 months to live, if lucky, maybe 24. Another doctor, who I asked for second opinion, told me that my 5-year survival rate was 20%. The third doctor, who actually treated me, gave me examples of two of his patients who had a similar condition and had survived 5 years or more. I wondered how to process these responses and to deal with the fear and anxiety that I was feeling at the same time. The treating doctor gave me hope, and we'll discuss hope in a little bit. The second one, who told me that my 5-year survival was 20%, gave me quote unquote realism. The first one, who diagnosed me and told me that I had 12 to 24 months, I thought was just irresponsible. I decided to use the realism of the second doctor, who based it on the Kaplan-Meier curve, and the hope derived from the anecdotes to make the best of my situation. I used the insights from the Kaplan-Meier curve to tie up all the loose ends. In the event of a mortality, the Kaplan-Meier curve encouraged me to make informed choices and accelerate key decisions to secure the family, finances, etc. Whereas the anecdotes provided me resilience and inspiration to embrace life and make every day and minute count. During this period, I stumbled upon a letter as I was reading through all kinds of books ranging from quantum physics, thermodynamics, spirituality, the illusion of time, the fabric of reality, and several others. During this period, and as I was poring through all of this literature, I stumbled upon a letter written by none other than Albert Einstein. He's writing this letter to, I think, the sister of who was grieving the death of her brother, who happened to be a close friend of Albert Einstein. This letter of Albert Einstein provided me a deep philosophical basis to process a possible mortality. Einstein, in that letter, states, and I quote, "Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us who believe and understand physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." Unquote. This has deep spiritual and philosophical implications. I think that Albert Einstein is saying that time is relative to the frame of reference of the observer, that the past, present, and future all coexist, where time is another dimension, much like space, and death is probably not the end, but maybe just another event like birth. I'm not sure if some of these conclusions that I'm drawing um, are kosher in terms of drawing out from what Albert Einstein wrote. But the fact that we are mere happenings, mere events in the cosmic scale of things, makes it easier for us to understand our temporary nature and accept mortality, which I think is one of the biggest fears, or probably the biggest fear, which haunts us. And to that extent, this letter helped me process fear better. You know, there is this classic Hindi movie called Anand, in which the protagonist, dying of cancer, played by Rajesh Khanna, a famous actor from the yesteryears, tells his friend Dr. Bhaskar, played by Amitabh Bachchan, and that famous dialogue is, "Babu Moshai, zindagi badi honi chahiye, lambi nahi." It loosely translates to, life should be big, not long. The idea that living life to its fullest should always trump longevity. I want to go back to the idea of hope. I spoke to you about how the third doctor who treated me gave me anecdotes of some of his patients who lived more than 5 years for a similar staging and diagnosis. And I examined what hope was doing. And I realized that as much as hope may be a good and a beautiful thing, it might also be at the root of fear. And I'll try and explain. So, I think fundamental to fear is our need or desire for personal security and self preservation, right? And this fundamental need to preserve ourselves, which is hardwired into our neurocircuitry, into our biochemistry, into our autonomic nervous systems, everything is hardwired to protect the organism. And therefore, everything we do is automated, including the mental thought processes, to preserve the organism. And this fundamental need to self preserve is, I think, at the root of all the fear. Because really, we are not at an existential threat most of the times in our day to day lives. But our organism operates and behaves as if we are. So we deal with criticism as if it is an existential threat. It is not. So the body responses are, I think, disproportionate. And 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 this fear or this desire for self-preservation that's hardwired creates the hope of survival. This hope for survival creates the desire for control. This desire for control creates rejection of what is, denial. I deny that I have cancer and I might have limited time and I'll somehow overcome it. So this denial. I don't accept the situation as it is. This rejection creates division because I'm not able to accept. And that division creates conflict mentally, internally, which can then extend outside of us. This conflict creates suffering because there's a mental narrative which is in opposition to what is. And that mental suffering creates further seeking. And that seeking, in turn, creates more fear of not receiving what we are seeking. And thus, fear creates hope. And this cycle of hope, desire for control, rejection of what is, staying in denial, creating division, creating conflict, creating suffering, is a vicious one that continues. The point I'm trying to make is maybe hope is not such a good thing. And there is probably a point where hopelessness, and I don't mean hopelessness in a negative way, where we give up in a positive way and say, listen, there's very little I, whoever that I is, can do. Everything is automated. And if everything in our organism, the neurocircuitry, the biochemistry, the heart rhythm, the kidney function, the liver function, everything is automated. And so are the emergent processes of the brain, which create what I call the emergent mind. And if all of this is automated and that there is very little that I can do, what am I hoping for? And how is this hope going to make things any better? Wouldn't it be better if I accept mortality positively? And as Einstein said, he is a far more brilliant mind than I can ever imagine myself to be in, I don't know, many lifetimes. And if indeed time is another dimension like space, and he says space and time, space-time, is integrated, then maybe life, which is birth, death, are just events. And therefore, the clue that I wanted to share with all of you, and I'm not sure if this is making sense to some of you, but I'm just trying to say that hope may not be such a great thing. And when we surrender to the fact that it is what it is, then somewhere we accept. And in that acceptance, we dissolve fear, we dissolve conflict, and maybe at some level, extinguish suffering. So I'll leave you with this idea of how hope could be at the basis of creating this vicious cycle of fear. I'll see you in the next episode where we will examine this automated process, the automated nature of the organism, and how understanding that could give us more clues into taming and maybe extinguishing fear.